It's the Introvert Dating Success Podcast, the show for introverted men that's all about learning how to attract beautiful women and still get your precious alone time. And now, here's your host, dating coach and fellow introvert, Harry Wilmington.
What up, IDS Mob? Welcome to the Introvert Dating Success Show. I'm your host, as always, Harry Wilmington. I know I'm doing a show at night now. I got home and I felt like doing a show. I didn't do one earlier today. And so I've been working on a lot of projects as of late through various other entities that I do outside of the show, but I always want to do shows to you guys. Also, I'm like 5 subscribers away from 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is pretty awesome for me because it means I get to get monetized real soon. And once that happens, it means I can continue to do even more great things for you guys. So I appreciate the love. Appreciate you guys showing support on the podcast as well as on the video cast. Continue to subscribe, continue to leave 5-star ratings. And more importantly, guys, continue to get this message out to other men who may need help in the dating realm, especially introverted guys. So I always encourage you guys to leave comments on my videos that I can answer in future videos. And so in today's episode, we're actually going to be answering a question from a guy that's actually tuned into quite a few of my lives and most recently left a question that I thought was worthy of answering. And so I'll go ahead and get into that question. For more of these, as always, go to the website, introvertdatingsuccess.com. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, wherever podcasts are found. Also, look at the little scroll thing below if you're watching on the video. If you want to support the show, you can go to the website and click on the tip jar tab, or you can go to my Cash App. If you have a question you want me to answer, again, leave it in the comments down below. So let's go ahead and get into this guy's question because I think it's a pretty important one. And he asked, what qualities should men look for in a woman when considering marriage? How do you know if a woman is quality with good morals and values? So obviously, as of late, there's been a lot of interest in, defining like high quality and high value men, as well as high quality and high value women. Okay. And so I'm going to be honest with you because I'm not married. I'm, still fighting the good fight out here dating. And so with that said, though, I've had enough experience to at least have an idea of what things you really want to have in a potential mate. On top of, I have a brother that's been happily married for almost 12 years now. God, 13 years. Jeez, Louisa. And my mom was married for 13 years before my dad passed away. And then I've had various people in my family that have also had long-term relationships. And so I've looked at that. I've looked at, what women today are bringing to relationships and also what men should be bringing, because as a man, I want to say this. As a man, you need to make sure that your house is in order before you even start thinking about marriage. You need to have your money together. You need to have a place to live together, your car together. You need to have yourself situated to where if a woman comes into the equation, it's not going to completely rock your world. Because even if you have a woman that's with you that is like, oh, I can spend my own money and yada, 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 trust me, if things start to go haywire, it all falls on you. And if you're not ready to handle that, then unfortunately, you should not be dating. You should not be even thinking about getting married. That's for people that already have their situation set. Now, with that said, in terms of like the qualities of a good woman, here's the thing, okay? Because there's the standard things that people say, which is like, you got to have a similar sex drive, same goals and values, yada, yada, yada. So there's a lot of positive things that people throw out there like, oh, you want to make sure these things are aligned with each other, this and that. And that's all great. And when you guys are having a good time together and life's going peachy keen, then there's going to be nothing to have tension over. So it's going to always be fantastic. But I don't want to talk about that because people always talk about, oh, have a good sex drive, make sure you guys like the similar things and yada, yada, yada. But what are the really important things that will help you actually keep a relationship going long term? And so through my experience, as well as through, various things that I've looked at and read, I recently saw a TikTok that also kind of addressed this question. I want to go over 5 really important qualities that you want to make sure the woman that you're considering marrying actually has, because there's a difference between somebody you're just dating for the short term and you can date them for like a year and a half, 2 years, and everything's fine. But what about getting to year 5? What about getting to year 10 and year 20? What are the things you actually need to make sure your mate's able to have as a character trait that's going to give you a better idea that it can last long term? Let's go over what those 5 things are, and I'll stop at each one. So here's the first one that I feel is very, very important is, can she have cordial arguments with you? Now, what do I mean? What I mean is that in any relationship, no matter how well you guys get along, you could have like 98% of the things you guys like with each other get along totally fine. But there's going to be that 2% that comes up where you're thinking about something one way and she's thinking about something another way, and there's going to be a clash. And that is perfectly fine because you guys come from two different walks of life. You have different experiences. Men's experiences and women's experiences on many levels are different. And so there's bound to be confrontation. But the question is, when those confrontations arrive, how are they handled? Are you with somebody that you can actually sit down with and talk to about things and say, hey, this is what my thoughts are. What are your thoughts? She's able to do the same thing. And then you guys can come together and start talking about it and come to some kind of agreement or some type of understanding. If you have that kind of woman, then that is a woman that is somebody that can understand that the purpose of an argument is not to try to prove who's right or who's wrong. It's to come to an agreement or an understanding so you guys can bounce back out to you guys are on the same page with each other, or at least are able to continue with the different thoughts, but better understand each other. Okay. But there are also plenty of women out there that are not cordial when they have arguments. And I want to preface this by saying, for the women watching this, I understand that men do this too. My audience is men, so I'm going to talk to men about women. So that said, there are women out there that do not know how to have a cordial argument, meaning they're going to come to you already assuming that whatever your thought is wrong. They're going to be yelling at you. They're going to interrupt you when you're trying to answer their questions or talk to them. They're going to galvanize the conversation, meaning like you'll say something for like 10 seconds. They'll say something for like 5 minutes. And then you try to respond to them and they'll say something like, well, wait, why are you interrupting me now? And it's like, but you've been talking for like 5 minutes. Like that's a person that is really more about themselves in the argument and is not trying to actually listen to what you have to say and be cordial. Because again, you guys both love each other. This shouldn't be a thing where you're trying to hurt each other or attack each other on purpose or, bring about things that are going to hurt feelings. It's an argument that is on an issue that needs to be addressed. It is not about trying to scorch earth with this other person who you have to go to bed with later. So if you have a woman that understands that and is willing to, sit down and listen to what you have to say and listen to your side of the argument, and I assume you're doing this for her too. I'm assuming you're a guy that's put together and knows how to have good arguments and has good conversational skills. And some people do not. Some women, as much as women talk about, they're the ones that have, that are more about talking, conversing. Some women out there really actually have bad conversation skills. They have bad argument skills, and they really just don't know how to do an argument in a way that's going to be effective because they're more focused on protecting themselves and blaming. If you're with that kind of person, I can guarantee you your marriage is not going to last a long time. So when you start having those early fights, look at how she fights. Look at what she says about you. Look at how she's coming to the fight and see if it's something that you feel would be a beneficial trait to have long term. If she's, again, yelling at you, calling out of your name, cussing at you, throwing things at you, this is probably not the person you want to consider as in a long-term relationship. That's the first one. The second quality to look for in a woman is to see, can she see things from both sides? Now, she doesn't have to agree with all sides. She could very well have her side of the argument, but is she able to look at your end of things and say, even though I don't agree with your thought on this, I can at the very least see where you're coming from? Because that's an important thing, because you want somebody that's going to be able to at times, be able to admit that they're wrong, and also recognize that from your position, this is why you have your thoughts and feelings, and this could then lead her to consider, could she possibly be wrong? Now, that's a thing you want to do also. As a guy, you always want to be like, even if I think I'm 98% right on my part, could I actually be missing something that maybe she's pointing out that I don't know? And that's important for both parties to have. But here's the thing. A lot of people only think in black and white terms. And furthermore, a lot of women in particular will do this thing where if your thought doesn't align with theirs, it's not just that you disagree, it's that you are like the devil. You're categorically wrong, and this thought that you had means that you must be the worst person ever, and therefore you need to be chastised for it and basically shamed into thinking how she thinks. If you're with a woman like that, run. Because the reality is, guy, there are going to be times when you're wrong, but that doesn't mean every single time that you have a viewpoint that's different from hers, that it means that she's right and that you're the devil, okay? Now, how do you test this out? Here's how you test this out, okay? Bring up a hot button topic or in today's society, you can bring up like a hot button celebrity and see what your woman says about it. Right now, the two most prominent ones I can think of are Donald Trump and Kevin Samuels. So if you go to your woman and you say, hey, what do you think about Trump? Or, hey, what do you think about Kevin Samuels and his views? See how she responds to the question, because there's a difference between a woman that says, for example, let's go with the Kevin Samuels example, because he just recently died. So I went to a podcast last week and I had to do an on-air thing with a woman where I was talking about Kevin Samuels. We were able to have a cordial conversation. At the end of it, I could totally understand why she would not like him. That's totally fine. I get it. But the conversation was cordial. She was at least able to say, I don't like him. I don't agree with him. But I could see how men would be appealed to his stuff. I can have that conversation all day, and I can see in her, and hey, I recognize based on the language used at times or how he talked to women at times that, yeah, I could see how women would not like him. That's totally fine, because I have the mindset of I can understand where I get my viewpoint from, but I'm also willing to look at and see where yours is from, and then see what merits they have that maybe I missed out on. And you want a woman like that also, because what you don't want is, let's say you bring up, again, Kevin Samuels. There's a difference between, well, he's not really my cup of tea, and I think these things, this and that. But I could get why men like him, but just, it's just he said some things and I don't really like that and whatever. Versus, oh my God, that Kevin Samuels, man, he just said some most blah, blah, blah. And anybody that likes him needs to go to a therapist and they're the devil and blah, blah, blah. If you're with the second kind of woman, run, because that means that not even on that high level, but like anytime you potentially have a thought that disagrees with hers, she's going to come with that same kind of energy, because that's a woman that's trying to fight to be right and is so caught up in her conviction of what she believes that she can't even see the idea of any part of how she's thinking about something being wrong. And that is not somebody you can deal with long term. So get out. That's the second one. The third quality to look for in a woman is, how does she talk about you in public when you guys are in a disagreement? So let's say you guys are at home and you're having a disagreement about something or an argument of some kind, and then you're supposed to go out to like an event. All right. So you go out to the event with each other and you meet up with some other couples and you're talking and having a good time. Is she going to bring up your argument in public or try to publicly shame you for the incorrect thoughts or ideas that you have in reference to an argument you guys were having while you're in front of other people? Because that's very, very important. When you're with the woman, whatever things you guys are going through, it should be between you and her. Now, I know, caveat is obviously if, you're abusing her, she has the right to go in public and say, this guy's abusing me, yada, 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 or, various other things that are actually troubling and law breaking, then yeah, expect her not to keep that in public. But something as simple as like, you forgot to wash the dishes, and then you go out to a public event and she's trying to joke on you in front of other people for not washing the dishes, leave her. Okay. Because what's going to happen is, if, again, it's one of those things where a disagreement comes up, or let's say you do something to unintentionally hurt her feelings. Well, now that's going to be on public blast. And those are those women that, like, they go on Facebook and they type up like little hints about how their love life has suddenly took a turn for the worse because their guy accidentally did something that she didn't find pleasing. Like, the public display of humiliation, if a woman's willing to do that, it means that, again, she's more about making herself look good and making you look like the bad guy to all of her friends and whatnot and her family. And that's not a woman that's really being a teammate. That's a woman that's like, well, I'm glad I have a guy, but I still want to look like I'm the one coming out on top. So if we're disagreeing about something, I need public opinion to prove that I'm right. And so I'm going to bring all the public against this person. And you don't want to stay with her long term. I'm telling you, run for the hills. That's the third thing. The fourth quality to look for in a woman is how are her finances? Like, how does she spend money? And more importantly, how does she try to spend your money? Okay. So there's a difference between, let's say you go out on the first couple of dates. Usually in this society that we're in, those first couple of dates, guy's going to pay. But is she complaining about where you're taking her? Is she complaining about how much money you're spending on her? By that fourth or fifth date, has she at all chipped in to say, hey, I'll pay for the tip, or I'll got this meal, baby, pay for the last 3 or 4 dates, or you take her to some like big outing, like an amusement park that costs a lot of money. And then when it comes to get the meal, she's saying, oh, I'll take care of that, versus like, oh, well, you pay for the park. And so, yeah, it's me. So pay for all my stuff. It's very, very important. Also, look at her credit card debt. Look at the things she has around her house. Look at what she likes to spend money on frivolously, because right now it's only affecting her. But when you guys get married, it's going to affect you. Her credit's going to affect your credit. how she spends money is going to affect how you all both spend money. And so recognize that, because guys don't think that later into it, like, oh yeah, I'll pay for whatever. Well, if she's got expensive taste now, don't think that that goes down when you get married. More often than not, it's going to go up. And then God forbid you guys have kids. Now she wants you to buy the best baby clothes and the best formula and put your kids in the best schools and spend all this money. And those aren't necessarily bad things. And ideally, if you're a guy that can afford that stuff, more power to you. But again, it's just something to look at, because you guys are not financially on the same plane. Or even something as simple as, like, when you guys go on vacations, what kind of hotels do you want to stay in? Do you want to fly first class versus economy? Like, these things will start to come up. And so you got to figure this stuff out early on to see if you can handle it, because if you don't, then it's not fair to her when you marry her, knowing that she's been spending all this money, and now you all of a sudden want to take away her expenses. Well, she might have been a person that has more expensive taste. That's now not fair to her, because you were supplementing her this whole time versus having a conversation about what that actually meant and if you could do it. That's number 4. And then the 5th thing, the quality to look for in a woman, is, has she dealt with her baggage and her trauma? Now, you guy, I'm talking to you. If you have your own personal baggage or trauma or viewpoints about women based on previous instances with women that have caused you to, maybe not keep women around long term, then you need to look into that. You need to, go to therapy, figure your stuff out first, okay? But that said, once you've done the work, then if you get into a relationship with a woman that hasn't done the work, it's not going to last long term. And women are coming to it very early on thinking, like, they'll make you think like, oh yeah, I got my stuff figured out, and I used to go through this with exes or whatever, but I've totally figured that out. But people can hide who they are for the first 3 to 6 months. But around that 6th month, you're going to do some kind of thing, and then she's going to have some response to it that is clearly like a triggered response from trauma. Okay, so this is why I say you need to make sure that she's either dealt with her baggage and trauma, or is currently dealing with it. She's regularly in therapy. If things start to come up, she can say, hey, you know what? I'm feeling this trigger. Let's talk about what that is and why I'm having that trigger and how I can be talked down from it. But make sure that she's dealt with it. Because I'm going to tell you now, women that have excessive baggage or trauma, they're going to constantly be looking out for you to mess up. And if you don't mess up early on, then when it happens later on, what's going to happen is they're going to say, see, I knew that was going to happen. I knew I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. And then this is why, blah, blah, blah. And now any mistake you make from then on is going to be your fault that she's going to blame it on. And she's going to say, well, this is because of you and blah, 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 blah. When really it's just she had baggage she didn't deal with. And she's looking at you making mistakes is like, this is like a major red flag or thing. The reality is, in any relationship, you are going to make mistakes, guy. And it's just nature of the relationship. You're going to do some stuff that's dumbheaded, or you're going to do something by accident that you didn't know was going to offend her. And that's normal stuff that happens in a relationship. If she takes that normal instance of you messing up and blows it up into this big cataclysmic thing to indicate you're like the worst guy ever now, whatever, then that's going to cause trouble, especially later on, because it's going to start piling on. And then she's going to be flashing back to anytime you do something, it's going to be like, see, this is just like those last 3 things you did. And it's like, babe, I made 3 mistakes in the span of like 2.5 years in a relationship. This is totally fine. But to them, it's not fine, because it just keeps flashing them back, and they're constantly having anxiety based on previous unresolved baggage and trauma. All right. So those are the things. Again, the 5 things. Can she have cordial arguments? Can she see things from both sides? Does she talk about you in public and when you guys disagree? And if so, how is she doing it? Is she humiliating you, or is she able to like keep that at home between you guys? How are her finances, and has she dealt with her baggage or trauma? These 5 things are really big, because ideally you want to have a peaceful relationship long-term with somebody that has a good head on their shoulders, has dealt with their baggage, knows how to handle arguments with you, and is okay with you disagreeing with her from time to time. Because ultimately, the idea is to have a peaceful environment where you're doing right by her, she's doing right by you, and you guys aren't constantly trying to purposely do things to bug each other. But with these things, if the woman does not have these traits that I talked about, you are in for a world of hurt and a bad time. And I don't want you to have a bad time. So hopefully, Guy, this answers your question. For the rest of you guys, if you have any questions or comments you'd like me to answer on one of these shows, leave it down in the comments below, or you can write to me at harrywilmington@gmail.com. Also, if you want to support the show, you can subscribe to the channel so I can get over to 1,000 subscribers. You can leave a 5-star rating wherever you heard this as a podcast, and you can go to introvertdatingsuccess.com, click on the tip jar tab, leave a monetary thank you. My Cash App is $Harry Wilmington as well. That's it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning into today's show. I'm Harry Wilmington, and I will catch you guys on the next show. All right? I'm out. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Introvert Dating Success Podcast. Visit us at introvertdatingsuccess.com for more great tips on attracting women using your natural introvert charm. Oh,